Hey, what's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing a Smite tier list. Gonna try to make this relatively short. I don't want it to be too long, but we are in season three. The patch notes for Escape from the Underworld just came out, so it is April 6th. So if you're watching this, just note that this tier list really only applies to this time right now in April. So this is where I personally think the gods are standing at the moment. If you don't know much about tier lists, uh, they're basically ranked on their viability in ranked and the Smite Pro League. This tier list doesn't apply to casual gameplay as much because you can play almost any god in casuals and you'll do pretty well. So this is really something that if you're looking to see where gods rank for ranked play and the Pro League, this is really what that applies to. So with that being said, we'll start going into the gods. You see, there's a lot to go through, so I'll do a quick overview of each one and where I think they stand. So the first god, Agni. Agni in this patch that just came out, as I said, it was called Escape from the Underworld, which is actually a really cool patch, a lot of cool changes, and a new god called Jingwei just came out as well, or is going to come out next week. And he got a little bit of like an attack speed buff to help out his passive. So that was a good change. I don't think it really did much to where he's at. I still think he's like the focal point of balance, and he has always been there. So I think he's in the A tier. Amu's and Cab got a buff 2 patches ago after this most recent one, and it was to the slow and his honey got buffed, so he got a little bit of an increase, but not anything to help him get out of the B tier. I think he's B plus because of that change, and he does do a lot of early game damage. But if you're playing in a ranked or pro league, then there's no reason to play Amu's and Cab. He has no mobility at all, so he can't escape, and his late game is actually pretty terrible. So he's in B plus tier. Opwash is really bad. He has a lot of burst damage, but again, he suffered from some serious nerfs, right after, well, when he came out, and then sometime after that as well. So his ultimate does like no damage. His burst really is pretty good, but it's not the best, and he's not mobile at all, which in Smite mobility seems to be pretty important. If you can't get in and out of fights, you're gonna tend towards the more negative side. So I think that's why he's in the B tier, and I don't see him getting out of there anytime soon. Amaterasu, when she came out, people were like, "Oh my God, she's ridiculous." She, for me, is actually I think A plus. The biggest issue with her is her early game clear is actually not very good, and she's kind of a weird mix between like an ability warrior and a basic attack. Like she has her basic attacks, which do help her out, especially with that passive that she has. But I actually think the passive is a little difficult to get off because she is, even though she has like a speed buff, which allows her to catch up with other gods, she's not an assassin. So I think setting up her passive can be a little bit tough, and the slow actually doesn't always work. I think Arachne has a similar problem, even though Arachne is an assassin who's good at chasing down gods. Um, you need to, again, with Arachne, you need to hit 3 basic attacks in order for her, I think, her 3 to activate, and they get in the little cocoon. It's like the same idea with Amaterasu. She needs to get 3 basic attacks off for her passive to get procced. And I think it's kind of tough. So I don't really see her passive being that useful at all. And her early game clear again is not great. Her 2 takes forever to charge early game, and her dash is really just okay. Um, her silence is actually kind of weak. It's a little tough to use unless like the god you're playing against is channeling an ability. It can be a little bit tough to time that silence. So I think her early game actually struggles. Again, her ultimate is ridiculous, and her her movement speed from her 1 is ridiculous. But uh, I don't know. She to me is not in S plus anymore. I think she's more towards the focal point of balance. She's still very strong, but not the best. On her has been getting some pretty decent buffs recently. I think he's an A plus god. People kind of thought he was down here, but I think he's A plus right now. He's really strong. He got some extra penetration in a buff recently, and he also his impale got less mana, so less mana cost reduction got reduced. So He's pretty strong. I don't know. I think he's kind of a sleeper god at the moment. I think you might see some on her in the future. Anubis is actually better, I think, than he used to be. To me, he's still B plus because his late game really struggles with his lack of mobility and the fact that he is stuck in one place for two of his abilities. So he struggles for me, but I think he's a little bit better than he used to be. So he's B plus. Ao Kwang is crazy good. He's S tier. One thing that I've noticed is that almost all the gods are leaning more towards the the mean. So if you look at a tier list, to me, it should be like a bell curve. You know, the less gods up here, and then more gods in the middle, and less gods on the lower end. And it seems to me that the mean is getting a little bit larger. More gods are kind of focused in the middle than they used to be. There aren't any completely skewed characters. There are some very powerful, almost broken ones, but not nearly as many as there used to be. And there also aren't as many gods that are like completely horrible. I think they've evened out a little bit better, and Ao Kwang I think is one that people seem to think is just completely broken right now, but really is not. He did get some stupid buffs that he didn't need, but I think he does have some weaknesses. For instance, his ultimate can be beads and Aegis out of. So you can definitely get out of that as long as you time it well. And his clear is actually really bad. Like it's not the greatest clear in the world. Um, so I think he does have some weaknesses. So he's probably S tier for me. Aphrodite is uh, in a weird spot right now. She's gonna be in B tier for me because she is a mage that's supposed to be in the solo lane, but unfortunately the solo lane is being completely taken over by warriors right now. They're just too strong for the mages. The mages can't handle it, and she has the same issue that Chang'e and Hell has, where her early game just struggles. If you can get her online, she is going to be great, especially when you start getting into those team fights. But her early game struggles so much that it's difficult to get her online without her falling behind the other god in the solo lane, and because solo laners are getting way ahead of the rest of their team and the enemy team, and as far as experience and gold goes, she's just going to be getting less of that than if she was playing against a Bellona or someone who's just going to be really aggressive and take her down. Like level one against a Bellona, she's going to just get destroyed. So. Um, she's just really weak because of that, and if you can get into the late game, she'll do well. But I think she's a little too risky, so she's B tier. Apollo just got a buff in the most recent one. I'm trying to remember. I just watched it actually. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, the mana for his one got reduced, and the mana for his four is got reduced as well. So he was, I mean, for me, he was A tier. I think, that's fine. So with the most recent one, unfortunately, I probably should have waited to do this tier list maybe a little bit after to see how the changes would actually be affecting the game. I think the mana reduction is good, but I still think he's A tier. I don't see him going into maybe A plus, but again, we'll have to see how the changes with the most recent buff go. I don't know why they buffed him. He was an A tier. He's a perfectly balanced god. Maybe they just thought he should be played more in ranked in the pro league. That could be why. Um, Arachne to me is a very strong jungler. I like her a lot. Her early game is good. I think she is pretty balanced. I don't think there's anything wrong with her. It's difficult to judge a god. If there's a other god that's hyper early game focused like Isis, or like Arachne. I mean, Isis has a good late game too, which is why she's one of the strongest gods in the game. But Arachne is definitely hyper early game focused, so it's tough to judge her because you might say, "Oh my God, her late game is really really bad." So, or not really bad, but just she struggles a little bit. So it's tough to judge a god like that because you want them to be good throughout the game. But that being said, if you can get her online and get like some early kills with her, I think Power Pod is actually pretty strong on her. If you can get her going, she's going to be fine. As long as you know how to position yourself in team fights. Ares to me is the worst support in the game. I hate Ares. His chains are too risky, and the way I look at whether I should play a god in Smite is if you can confirm their damage or whatever they are. If they're a guardian, if you can confirm their support abilities, then they're going to be stronger. And Ares has a really tough time confirming his chains, his Chains are very hard to hit. You have to aim them really well. His clear is terrible, and right now the big part of the meta is having strong early game clear. Because if you can clear your jungle camps before the enemy team before you get into lane, you're going to outpush the lane early on, and getting that early game pressure is actually extremely important. And I think that's where the meta is right now. And also, if you can get to the lane first, you can also push the lane enough to go to the enemy's board camps by the time they respawn for the second time. So you can get a lot of extra XP if you clear your jungle camps first, and clears jungle camps awfully. His basic attacks are terrible. Um, he can't really do any damage on minions with his chains, and his flame ability is not good either, especially early game. So he really struggles. Of course, he has a super strong ultimate, but you can if he doesn't use it like consistently, then you can almost beads out of it every time he uses it. So to me, he's weak. He is a beads burner, but it doesn't really matter. Um, you really have to build some cooldown on him for his ultimate to be useful, and you have to just always use your ultimate in order to try to get the other people when they don't have beads on. So he's got a lot of issues. I think he's the worst support in the game. Very tough to play. Artemis got some buffs, and I actually think she's pretty good now. I'll put her in B plus because I don't think she's quite in the A tier, but she got well. There was a buff to Golden Bow, or they changed it, and they also buffed her ultimate, and they buffed the power on her too. So her wave clear with the bow is actually gonna be really really strong. The only issue still with her is her mobility and her lack of escape. So she really needs to be paired with like a Khepri or a Geb in order to survive the early game. And when you get into the late game, it's gonna be tough too. She carries harder than almost any other hunter in the game. But because of that, she's also very much like a glass cannon. So she is I wouldn't really use her. She's getting a little bit more up there. Maybe some other key buffs might put her into A tier, but I think she's B plus. She's not B anymore, I don't think. Athena is extremely strong. I've been watching the Pro League, and every game, the team that has Athena more than likely wins. Whatever team you're on, if you pick Athena, you're probably going to win in the Pro League. And to me, that just screams that she is one of the best characters in the game. Her taunt is completely overpowered. It sets up so many abilities. I mean, almost every ability can be a great follow-up to an Athena taunt. And she's also very, very aggressive, and she does a lot of damage. And she has a global ultimate that also does a lot of damage and allows her to gank from anywhere on the map. So she does too much of everything. So she's definitely S tier. She's one of the best gods in the game for sure. Oelix, I think is A tier. She does a lot. She has a lot of damage. She clears the wave pretty well, I guess. Her ultimate is strong. It's a good control ability. She has a lot of mobility with the Suku, um, and so she can get around the map really well and just can gank often, which I think is very important for a jungler, and that's probably her best thing. I guess the weakest part about her is, um, I mean, as far as damage goes, she isn't the highest damaging, and she also has to rely on her own knockup, which if you're not getting that, then there's really no use. And you kind of have to comp with her to get some other knockup in your team to really make her like as good as she possibly can be. But she is being played in the pro league, and the people that are playing her are doing pretty well. So I think she is a good focal point of balance. She's not like too strong at all. Bacchus, I don't like Bacchus really, but he's pretty good. He has some good damage as a support. He is, pretty strong as still. Um, Next is Bakasura. Bakasura just got a buff in the patch I just watched, and it was that he can now eat any jungle camp minion. Um, he doesn't have to attack them and wait for them to get to a certain threshold in order to eat them, which is how it used to be. So, like if you were to attack the boar camps, you might have to like attack the boar a couple times before you could eat it, and now you can just go up and just eat it right away. The same with like the mid harpies. So he can now eat any jungle camp minion as long as it's not like the Gold Fury or Fire Giant, anything like that. So, and it can't be a buff either. He can't swallow the big mana buff uh, camp as well. So that was something that happened recently. I think he might be B plus again. All these kind of like lower end characters like AMC Anubis, Artemis Bakasura. I think they've all moved up to B plus actually because they've all been getting some buffs. Anubis just seems to be better with the new mage items that are coming in with this season. So I think, they're all kind of moving up, whereas some other gods that were either at A or maybe even higher, they're moving down. So there are some changes, but in general, you can see that they're all kind of towards the middle a little bit more, which is exactly what you want, really. Um, so he's getting a little bit better, I think. Bastet is okay. Her early game is super annoying. Once she gets to level 5, she pretty much has a guaranteed kill with her ultimate. Her cats are ridiculous early game. You can't kill them. And then, once you get to late game, obviously her cats get almost no power at all. You can kill them with like, a couple basic attacks if you're a hunter or, one ability from a mage. So her cats lose a lot of power late game. Very early game focus, similar to Arachne, but she is very strong. Her leap can is a great mobility ability. So she is okay. I don't see her being one of the best gods. I think she's in the middle, which I think is fair. Bologna to me is, I don't know. She might be S tier. Some people are putting her in A plus. She is really really strong. She's always been strong. I think she just synchronizes with items like Frostbound Hammer really well. I think Breastplate of Valor works very well in her. Shin size, any like attack speed items. I think Itch of All is a great early game item for her as well. So she is very strong. She's tanky. She can also do a lot of damage with her basic attacks. Her abilities do a lot of damage. She has a lot of utility. So to me, she's one of the best gods in the game, and I think she's been there forever. I think recently I may have put her, or, maybe a couple weeks ago, I may have put her in A plus, but that's just because more other gods were kind of more in favor, like Ravana, Amaterasu, but now those gods are kind of stepping down a little bit, and Bologna's coming back and saying, I'm the best, or one of the best soul laners. In the Pro League, you're seeing Bologna getting picked over Amaterasu and Ravana every game, so she's one of the best, besides like Tyr. Tyr is another one that's very popular right now, but you're seeing her in almost every game in the Pro League, so she's S tier. Cabrakan is terrible. He doesn't do what he's supposed to. He's a support, and you have to play him like an assassin. I played with him recently, and he has two abilities that you have to be really close to someone with. Like it's again, they're like assassin abilities. Actually, he has three. His ultimate as well. You have to be really close, and he does too much damage for a support. He's not a support. He really is a guardian jungler. So his nickname is perfect for him. He's Fat Loki. That's really what he does. Is he just does damage. And his little pound thing just puts him in a lot of damage, a lot of danger because he becomes his target, once he starts doing that, and he really is kind of useless in the dual lane. So he's C tier. I think he might be the only C tier god if I think about it. But I'm not sure. We'll have to see. I think he is C tier though. Shock is okay. He just doesn't do enough mid to late game. His early game's good. He has a lot of good clear, but there's no reason to ever pick him because his late game is just terrible. So I think B plus is fair for him. Chunga just got I believe she just got a buff. Yeah, she did. She got a buff to her moonflower dance. I don't even know. Like I know what her abilities do, but I don't know what they're called. Um, so her damage on her moonflower dance, whichever ability that is, I think that might be her one. It got damage buff, and it also got a mana cost reduction, I think. So a little bit of a buff to her. She still doesn't have anywhere to go in Conquest. She can't be in the soul lane because she'll get wrecked. She can't go in the middle lane because she'll get wrecked. She can't be support because she'll get wrecked. She really has nowhere to go, which is unfortunate. I think if they buffed her damage a little bit, buffing her damage is really what she needed. And again, she has the same trouble as Aphrodite in Hell. She cannot get online, which is unfortunate. Chiron just got another nerf in this last patch, so I don't even know where he's going to be. I'm actually going to put him in A tier right now. I think he was maybe A plus with the last nerf to his ultimate, which nerfed his movement speed during his ultimate, but they just nerfed something else. I'm trying to think of what it was. I'm not really sure. I don't know what they just nerfed, but they did nerf Chiron recently in the last one. I just watched the patch notes as I said, and Chiron is getting nerfed, so he's probably moving down to A tier. That's where I'm going to put him for right now. I don't think he's up here anymore. I actually hated the nerf to his ultimate. I think it makes his ultimate way less effective. I liked being able to chase down enemies while I was ulting, and now you can't do that. You have to like just let them run away. So I didn't like that, and I don't like Chiron that much as a character, anyways. Um, Kronos is very strong. I think he's A plus. Um, he has great movement speed. His abilities can do a lot of damage. A lot of mobility, which is actually great for mages. He's best in the ADC role for sure. He can be played in mid solo, but he's better as an ADC. There are just a lot of supports that set up his abilities really, really well. For instance, the Capri root plus the Kronos AoE is just a great combo. So I think he's very strong and definitely one of the best like ADC characters at the moment. Cupid is underrated, but I'll put him in A tier. You could argue that he's lower, but I think his ultimate's very strong. He does a lot of damage. Um, thing that people say about Cupid is that his late game is not very good. I don't think that's true. I think that his early game is stronger, but I think his late game is still very good. I think his ultimate is just a perfect way to disrupt team fights and a good way to set up his damage. And once you get his items online, like his ultimate will just mess up people and you can hit him with the heart bomb. So I think he's underrated, and he's an A tier. Fenrir has fallen out a little bit in the pro league. He had like well, I mean, back in the end of season two, he was really popular. In the beginning of season three, he was like S plus. Now I think he's moved down. I think he could still be A plus. I don't think he's an A tier yet, but he seems to just not be very popular at all. Adapting is really the only player I know of in the pro league who still uses him. I could be wrong about that, but you're not seeing him very often anymore. So I think just because of that, he's going to move down. Freya is not getting played at all. I think she's a solid A tier right now. She is a good carry, but I've always made the argument, why would you ever pick Freya when you can pick Soul? Because Soul is just a better version of Freya. She may not have that like invulnerable, air raid ultimate that Freya has. Well, she does in a way, but I still think Soul in every way is just better. Better attack speed, better damage. Her 2 is just a great ability. Freya's 1 is kind of useless. I mean, the banish helps set it up, but I think her 1 is kind of a useless ability. Geb, a lot of people, well, I watched Incon. He had a tier list recently, and he thought Geb went to A plus. I mean, he thought he went to A. I think Geb is still A plus. I wouldn't say he's an S tier god, but I think his shield is still really overpowered, and his early game struggles a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. You can still survive the laning phase and do really well. He can also gank very well as a support, and he has great mobility with his rollout. So I think he has a lot going on, and he's very strong. And the Geb shield is just stupid. So I think he's A plus just because of that. Guan Yu is S right now. His heal is just really really strong. There's a lot of people are saying that the big thing right now in season three is warriors or like physical gods that can sustain, or maybe not physical gods, but gods besides mages that have sustain. So like Sylvanas, Guan Yu, Tyr has a heal, Vamana has a heal with his ultimate. Any god that has like an ability that can help them heal will just help them out so much. And Guan Yu's team fight presence is just off the wall. He can just heal your team up without even thinking about it, and he also does a lot of damage as a warrior. So he's very strong. He's definitely one of the best gods in the game right now. Um, Hades, I don't like Hades at all. I used to play him a lot, but I think he's just a lot weaker than other mages. I think he's going to be in B plus. He's very very slow. He does a good amount of damage, but has a lot of trouble initiating. His ultimate can be easily beads out of. Um, he just has a lot of trouble, and a lot of his abilities focus on him doing damage next to him in like an AoE, like his ultimate and his dash and his three. So he doesn't have range, doesn't have mobility, can't initiate. Um, so I think he has a lot of issues, and so he's B plus for me. Hebo is bad. Unfortunately, his early game is just horrible. He can push the lane really well with his two, um, but really you have to survive the early game. His abilities do like no damage early game, and it's actually very frustrating. His ultimate is like useless once you get to level 5. He's probably one of the worst level 5 characters in the game. Like I would say his ultimate is one of the weakest once you get it online. Late game it's great, but without that damage, you are not going to be doing much. So he's B plus for me. Hell is not good. I don't think she's B. She's probably B plus again because she can do really well late game, but she struggles to get out of the lane. But you know, if you can get her online, she's gonna be good. Hercules is better. I think he's A. He used to be like B tier because people just Hi-Rez said that he wasn't performing well, and I think that's just because Hercules is a little tricky to play. He has a tough combo, but if you can hit it, you can do well. And they did buff his damage and his heal recently, so I think he's a very solid soul laner. Hu Yi is one of the best hunters in the game for sure. He has great clear, a lot of utility. His ultimate is very annoying to deal with. He can has a good escape with his little leap. So he's one of the best gods, one of the best hunters in the game for sure. Hunbats, Hunbats has that ultimate. That's really the story of Hunbats is that he has this huge AoE ultimate that allows him to disperse enemies and then focus on whatever god he wants to kill. He's really good at kind of that single target focus with his ultimate, and he doesn't really do that much damage like with his other abilities, but his ultimate is really all he needs. He's kind of like a Cupid in that, you know, his whole kit revolves around his ultimate breaking up the team fights. So he to me is one of the better junglers. Um, I wouldn't say he's the best though, and he's not getting played much in the SPL. So I'm actually going to put him in A tier for the moment. Hunmetz has kind of gone down a little bit, I think, recently. Isis is one of the best mages in the game. Um, her early game is ridiculous. If you get power pot on Isis, you will almost guaranteed get a kill within the first 5 minutes, or like the first whatever, it's like 3 minutes that you have with the power pot. Within that first 3 minutes, you'll probably get a kill with Isis if you get power pot. So she can get online really, really well, and her ultimate is great with team fights. So even though like Hi-Rez wants you to believe she's like all early game and her late game's bad, and they did just nerf her wing gust so that it isn't as good late game, her ultimate is still an amazing team fight ability, and with that makes her like great throughout the entire game, in my opinion. Janus is a very strong mage. He's A plus. The only reason he's moved down is because of Isis. Really, Isis is just considered to be better than Janus at the moment. I think that will change eventually because Janus has always been like S tier, but I think he just moved down because Isis has just jumped ahead a little bit. Kali, Kali is S plus for me. She might be the only S plus god in the game, besides maybe Guan Yu. Guan Yu could, you can make an argument, but I think because of the nerf they just did to Guan like 2 patches ago, I think he is S, and Kali to me is S plus. She is one of those gods that everyone was like, why didn't we realize her her damage was so good? Like she was just slept on forever, and now people are using her more and just destroying a lot of the reason that she's been doing extremely well recently is also because of Cyclone Spin's Penta in a game I think against Eager recently. So that just made her like even better. Like everyone's just in love with Kali at the moment. So she's getting picked or banned in almost every pro league game. Um, Khepri is the besides Athena one of the best supports in the game. I think Athena and Khepri are almost equal. Athena might edge out Khepri a little bit, but his ultimate is super strong. He gets nerfed a lot, and rightfully so because his ultimate is stupid. So, but despite all the nerfs that he's had, he's still S tier for me. Uh, Kuko Khan is garbage. He's B tier. You cannot hit his ultimate. His ultimate takes like uh, forever to charge up, and so it's really hard to confirm the damage. He has a lot of good clear, and they just buffed his 3 to do even more clear. And no, to they reduced the mana cost of it, so he can clear even more early game. But his ultimate's just too tricky to use, and his little like speedy ability, whatever, isn't really that good. Like he can chase down people, but he doesn't need to. Like he's a mage, he doesn't need to chase down people. Um, and then his little like slow ability is stupid. It's like one of the worst abilities in the game for sure. So he's B tier for me. He could even be C, but I'll leave him B tier for now. Kumbhakarna is a great support right now. I'm like tempted to put him in an S tier, but he's not there yet. I think he's A plus. His mez is very annoying to play against. It's pesky. It's like a pesky ability, and he does a lot of damage. He does like some of the most CC of any support. His ultimate is super annoying, and if you build a little bit of damage on him, he can be really lethal, especially late game. So he's definitely one of the best supports in my opinion right now, besides like Athena Kepri. Loki, I hate Loki. He's good. I'm to be fair, I'll put him in B plus. He split pushes really well. His tower damage is great. He cannot team fight for the life of him though. He has no ability of team fights at all. Like he doesn't know what to do. So he's really good at split pushing, doing his own thing. But in a team oriented game, that really doesn't matter as much. Sure, get the tower, but while you're getting the tower, the rest of your four team members are getting 5v4'd and they're dying. So he's just not my favorite character. Medusa, I think, is one of the most underrated gods at the moment. I'm gonna put her in A tier just because she's not getting used that much. She is seeing a little bit more play in the SPL, but I think she's very underrated. Her ultimate is great. Her wave clear is pretty good, but she just has a lot of there are a lot of gods out there that are just better than her. Like Hu Yi is just better than Medusa. Um, so that's she just like kind of falls down because a lot of other hunters just kind of rise above. Like Chiron is another one who just like, why would you pick Medusa when you can be Chiron? That's kind of how it is. So she's just in a tough spot, I think. Mercury is okay. I think he's A tier too, and you're seeing a lot of gods in the A tier. I think Mercury does a lot of damage. His early game struggles a little bit. He has a very good ultimate, but he just doesn't do enough early game, and he can do okay. He's not like the worst early game god, but I think he that is probably his weakest part about him. Neith is good. I think she's A tier at the moment. She was really popular for a long time and then kind of fell off recently, I think. She has like some of the best wave clear of any hunter in the game, but I think it doesn't really matter. Uh, I mean, the clear is great, but I think you can Aegis out of her ultimate. It can be a little tough to hit her root sometimes. Her little backflip is a good ability, but it's predictable, so I think she's A tier. Nemesis, I don't really know much about Nemesis. I don't really see her very often. I think she's pretty good. She has some good, like she can short protections, and she has like an ability that will reflect damage or something like that. So she is a different kind of god. She does a lot of different things as a jungler. Um, but like, why would you pick her? There's no reason to ever pick Nemesis really. Um, Naja is doing a lot better than he used to. I think he's a solid A plus tier god right now. He's really a feast or famine kind of god. If you're not hitting his abilities, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But if you are, you're going to be doing very well. So he's one of those gods that you have to be able to play well to use him. Nox is bad. She's B. She's another god. She's similar to Naja actually, where if you're missing her root, there's no reason to play her. Like you're not going to get any damage off. You're not going to confirm any damage. You're going to do nothing. You're just going to sit there and then maybe you get your ultimate off. Like that's it. So she's kind of useless. Nuwa is A tier. She does a lot of late game damage, struggles early game, has a lot of great push with her minions, but again, without her minion, like without all three minions, she seems to struggle. I think with like just if you level up the three, um, or no, the two. Sorry, the two is the clay minions. If you level that up and you get one, like it doesn't that one clay minion actually doesn't matter. So you really have to get the three clay minions online to really be impactful in your lane. Odin just got a nerf to the cooldown on his ultimate. His ultimate had a cooldown of 60 seconds, which is stupid. Like if you get full cooldown, you're going to be at what? 60 seconds? I mean, sorry, not 60 seconds. Um, like 35 seconds. I'm terrible at math. I have no idea. But if you get full cooldown on him, like he can do his ultimate every second basically. So his they just nerfed that, so now it's 75 seconds instead of a minute. So that's a little bit better. 15 seconds more for his ultimate. That'll make him a little less annoying to deal with in the team fights. They did also just change the item spectral armor so that you can, when you use a relic, you can move through deployable items or deployable buildings, whatever. Yeah, buildings, I guess. So, like Odin's spear, ring of spears, you can actually use a relic, and then the passive of spectral armor will allow you to go right through his rings. So that's actually a good escape item, and so that might be a good counter to Odin. I think it depends on if that item gets picked up. I don't know if it will, but it's an interesting change. I think he's still very strong. He does a lot of early game damage. He's a great jungler, great solo laner, and a great support. So um, the fact that he's a really strong flex pick still makes him like A plus for me. Osiris, I think, is A plus as well. You're not seeing him very often, but I don't really care because he's still very strong. He has a lot of damage, really good basic attack damage. If you build him basic attack focused, he will do very, very well. He can beat almost anyone in the soul lane. He can go toe to toe with a Bellona. Um, and that's again because he's tanky, but he also has the basic attacks to clear the wave, and he has some good abilities to match it. So he has a little bit of everything, and I don't see why he should ever move down from like A plus. I think he should always be up there. Um, Poseidon is actually a little bit worse now. The main reason is because and this was actually I'm stealing this from Incon's tier list. Um, you used to not be able to get relics, uh, or they used to be called what were they called? See, it's been so long now, I forget. I just know them as relics now. Um, but before they were called relics, you'd actually have to pay for them, and to in order to get like sanctuary, which used to be Aegis, you would have to wait. And Poseidon, if you were against a Poseidon in a lane, he would probably get to level 5 before you, which means that he could Kraken you without you being able to use your Aegis. So that was really one of the stronger parts of his kits, the fact that he could get his Kraken online really early, and now you can just buy Aegis right away, so you can Aegis his Kraken at level 5. So that makes him a little bit weaker, and he has great wave clear. He can still do well with the Kraken. It's actually kind of tough to Aegis his Kraken. You have to be really quick. So his Kraken will hit like 8 times out of 10, but I still think he's one of the weaker mages in general. Raw to me is bad. I don't like Raw. He has good heal and good clear, but his ultimate is too risky. His line is also risky if you're trying to hit players. So, um, if you're good with him, you can get that line off, almost every time and hit a god almost every time, but it can be hard to confirm that damage. And that's why I think he's a little bit lower because again, it's all about if you need to be able to confirm your damage. That's why Nox is in B tier. She can't confirm her damage at all. So that just makes her weaker than a god like Isis. She's going to be hitting her wing gust every time. She is going to hit her spirit ball almost every time. So it's just a lot easier to confirm damage with Isis. Um, Raijin is awesome. I like him a lot. I'm tempted to put him in S tier, but he hasn't been doing that well in the SPL as I've noticed. His ultimate can actually be a little tricky. I think when he first came out, everyone's like, "Oh my god, this ultimate's huge and crazy. It does too much damage." But it actually you can Aegis out of it pretty well. You can run out of it if he doesn't taunt you. It's actually a little hard to aim. It's pretty tough, and it also makes him susceptible to kills after he uses it, because again he's this big target. It's kind of like a Hades ult. You know, you become this big target when you make a lot of noise like that, and for me that makes him not as good as maybe people are thinking he is. So that's why I think he's an A plus. Rom is okay. Zapman uses, I don't know why this isn't working. Okay. Zapman uses Rom a lot and has been destroying with him, so that could be a reason to put him up there. But I don't know. I just think there are just a lot of other hunters out there who perform a lot better early than Rom. Um, his ultimate, I think, is really risky. You can miss it. So he's really a god built for those like pro players because you really have to be good at those snipes. And if you're not, you're gonna just miss his ults, you know, more times than you're gonna hit it. And to me, if you do the math out, you want to be able to hit your ults at least half the time or more than half the time. So that's why I think he shouldn't be any higher than A, at least at the moment. Ratatosker is moving up a little bit. Divios plays him in soul lane. I still think he's pretty weak, but he can do well in the soul lane. Robin is okay now. He's not overpowered. People aren't really playing him. In fact, I don't see him at all in the pro league. I think he does a lot of damage. They nerfed his leap, so he can't escape as well as he used to. Um, but he's kind of a simple character. He just, you know, gets in there, punches people, and then jumps on people. Like he doesn't really do that much. I don't think he's that interesting of a character in general. So um, he's definitely not that popular at the moment. He used to be like S plus, but he's probably A tier now. Scylla just got a buff in this last one, and I think it's a crazy buff. I don't know why they even buffed Scylla. She doesn't need it, but they buffed her, so she's gonna go to A plus. She may be bordering up on S. I'm not gonna put her in S because she still has an ultimate that's tricky to hit, but they buffed her 3. The late game damage on the 3 just got buffed by like 200 mana. I mean 200 damage. The her late no, it was 100. So her late game at level 5, her 3 ability, her big AoE got buffed from like 100 base damage to like 300 base damage at the fifth level of that, which is crazy. And they also increased the scaling of her Sikkim, her roots, so her late game is going to be even crazier than it is already. Like she struggles early game, but they're just making her late game even crazier than it was already. So we are in a meta that's super early game focused, so that may not make Scylla as interesting. But I still think that that buff was awesome. I don't know why they did it, but they buffed her 3 a lot. Um, Circuit is S. She could even be S plus. Um, they buffed her for some reason. I don't know why. I think it was because Surcat was the best god in the game forever, and she like had that title. She was like, "Oh, Surcat's the best god in the game." Like there's no question. And then it got to the point where it was like, "Oh, she's not the best god in the game." And in fact, there are a lot of gods that are better than her because they nerfed her, and I don't think that they like that. They liked that Surcat was the best god in the game, and I think they want her to get back to that place. Um, Circuit is a tricky god to use. I think that might be why they like that she was the best god in the game because she's hard, she's very tricky, she's a very um, subtle god. You know, you have to kind of be agile, you have to be quick, you have to have good aim. You know, you have to. She's very tricky, um, and she's like she's hyper single target focused. So they buffed her. They buffed some of her damage. Not sure why, but she is S tier, one of the best junglers in the game right now, behind Kali. I think Kali's a little bit better, but they're pretty close. Scotty is now going to start seeing play. I think she's S tier. Like I don't, I've played so many games of support with Scotty, and she just always outpushes. She always outpushes. You almost always gets an early kill because Calder has like infinite range. He can just chase down whoever he wants. Um, and she's just crazy. Like her ultimate is a guaranteed kill almost every time. Um, so to me, she's S tier. I don't see how she could be any lower. People say that she's easily ganked, but who cares? Just sick, like put your dog on them and then run away. Like it doesn't matter. She's not. She's really not that gankable. Than I've heard people say. So I think she's S tier. Um, Sobek is pretty good. He's an okay support. There's really not much to be said about him. He does what he does. He has some pretty good damage as far as supports go. His ultimate is great, but he's not the best. Like there's just other gods that just do a lot more. Soul is still S tier for me. I think her damage is still stupid. They nerfed her dash, which was actually a really good nerf. Her ultimate is okay. Like she has a pretty good ultimate, which is great late game. But the biggest thing is that her attack speed and her two just do so much damage. So I think she's an S tier, and I think she'll probably stay there for a while. Um, Wukong is A tier. He's an okay laner. You won't see him very often in the pro league, but he is good. His ultimate is great. He can heal up on it, so it's good sustain for him. But he really is just a pretty good soul laner at the moment. Sylvanas, I am so excited for what just happened to Sylvanas. Again, I just watched the patch notes. They buffed his pull, and this is like the best buff ever. I'm so excited to use him again. I really hope he goes back to like S plus S tier, because he's one of my favorite gods. He's one of my favorite supports in the game, and I've always enjoyed playing him. I don't people like putting him in A tier. I'm like, no, no, no. He's definitely A plus, and I think he's at least A plus right now. We'll see what happens after this buff, but they buffed the root. I mean the pull to cost less mana early game and have a lower cooldown reduction. They buffed it to like 6 seconds less than it used to be because it was a really long cooldown for that. And I always thought it was weird that the cooldown on that was so long. But now the pull will actually go down in mana cost with each level. So I don't think I've ever seen that. Like usually an ability on each level it'll go up in mana cost, but now it'll go down. So late game he's gonna be able to use his root like non-stop. He's just gonna be, I mean, his pull. He's gonna be using his pull non-stop. He's gonna like crazy pull going on with Sylvanas late game, and that's just gonna help him get so many picks in team fights. It's going to be awesome. So very excited to see that change. I hope it moves him up to S tier. I hope Hires made a huge mistake by doing that. We'll see. Um, Thanatos is A tier. Good early game god. We are in an early game meta right now. Again, that's just because if you can clear the jungle camps at level 1 quicker than the enemy team, then you can push the lane quicker, and then you can steal their XP camps once they come back, once they respawn. So there's just a lot going into the early game which can put you ahead, and that's the reason why it's super early game focused. And since Thanatos is an early game god, he should be one of the stronger junglers. People aren't really using him because he is still risky, but if you can get an early kill on him, he's gonna be very strong. Thor is he's always been up here like A plus. I think right now he's an A plus. He's not um, as popular as he once was. I think that's because of the emergence of Kali, also the re-emergence of Serkets, and you're seeing like Ao Kuang. So they're just other junglers that are just stepping up above Thor. So he's not like first pick, first ban material anymore. He's still being played a lot in SPL, so I think he's A plus, but I don't think he's the best jungler at all. Tyr is one of the best solo laners. He has a heal that he can use a lot. His fearless is super annoying, um, and yeah, his heal is just like the biggest part about his kit. He has so much sustain, and he's great in team fights, very tanky. So I think he's going to be an S tier. Him and Guan Yu are, I mean, him, Guan Yu, and Bellona, like the three best warriors in the game. I think you could argue that Guan Yu and Bellona are also two of the best characters in the game in general right now. But Tyr is up there too. So these three are going to be seen. You're literally going to see one of these gods in every single pro league game. Um, if you don't see Bellona, you're probably going to see Tyr, or you might see both. So next is Uller. Uller is okay. I don't really like Uller. I've never played him. Don't really have much to say about him, but he seems to be too tricky to play. So he's an A. Vamana is pretty good. He's A plus. He's good sustain with his ultimate. Does a lot of damage. His clear is pretty good. Um, he's also tanky too. So I think he's good, and I think his dash is also great addition for his mobility. I think he has a lot of mobility with that dash, so he has a lot going on, and he's pretty strong right now. Vulcan unfortunately is bad. I like him a lot. I like his kit, but he's easily ganked. His damage can be a little tough to confirm. His meatball, you might miss it sometimes. His ultimate will hit probably less than half the time, which stinks because, I mean, you can use your ultimate like close range and that's a guaranteed hit, but the longer range you use it, the more damage you'll get. So you really do want to use it long range if you can, but it's very, very hard to hit. Shibalanke, unfortunately, is bad. He may be B tier, but I'm gonna put him B plus because I like him. Um, his early game is horrible, and because we're in early game meta, as I said, he's gonna suffer a lot. You cannot play a Shibalanke against a Scotty. You cannot play him against a Chiron. You cannot play him against a Hu Yi. Like these gods will just destroy him early game. And sure, he might eventually get his passive up by getting some kills, but unless you're playing like an incompetent fool, there's no reason a Shibalanke should ever beat the hunters I just mentioned. So that makes him just one of the worst hunters in the game, unfortunately. Um, Xing Chen is B tier. He's pretty bad. They nerfed his little body slam thing to only slow instead of root. His HP 5 got nerfed. You can easily beats out of his ultimate, so he's really useless. He doesn't have that much damage either. I don't like his dash. He just has a lot of issues, and I don't really. Even when he was released, everyone was like, "Oh, he's the best guy in the game." When he was released, I didn't really understand why. I think he's always been kind of eh. I never really liked him. Amir is pretty good. I think he's going to be seen a lot in SPL. Um, I think his wall is tough. I've never been good with like placing his wall. I'm always afraid that I'm gonna like trap my teammates in with the team, like with the enemy team and like kill them. So you have to be good with placing his walls. You have to be careful, especially late game. So he can be a little risky, but he does do a lot of damage for support and he sets up his team very, very well. Zeus. Zeus is really good. I'm not sure where I want to put him. Either A plus or A. I think I'm gonna put him A plus because they did just buff his 2 so that it doesn't knock back minions, which is great. The only thing with Zeus is he is the slowest god in the like he's so slow. He's like a snail. He just like crawls along and can't do anything. Um, like late game, he does so much damage late game, but he is basically a statue. Like he just stands there and just watches people die, and he's so easily ganked. It's kind of frustrating. Um, so if you've never played Zeus, you don't understand that he just is so slow. So with that, I think that's his one of his biggest weaknesses. No escape, just kind of stands there and gets off damage, kind of like Anubis. But he's just a better form of Anubis, and he does have an interesting two. His two is an interesting ability. So um, I think he's a strong A plus god. And finally, we have Zhang Kuei. Zhang Kuei I think is A tier. Not any more than that. He was really strong for a while and then just kind of fell out. I don't think that he really has a place anymore in the game. So that's it. That's my tier list. This is how it stands again. This is April 6th, so uh, this will lose relevance, as time goes on. But if you like to do your own tier lists, I would like to hear, if what changes you made or, what gods you think I misplaced if I did, or anything that you agree with, let me know. And with that, I thank you very much for watching and I hope you have a great day.